Okay, the daily work folder. If you look back at the folder from last time, okay, so the third, then I added a folder Lab 8 because I noticed that the code that I put up there, someone for Project 2 and someone for Lab 8. So all the stuff that's specific to Lab 8, I moved it into the Lab 8 folder from last time. Okay, so that's a little change from what I had left up there. Okay, but what I want to look at now is the folder with today's date, and possibly I'm going to put stuff up into a Lab 8 folder. I'll definitely put stuff up in Project 2. And let's take a look at this web page that goes over what we're going to talk about. Okay, so the bulk of the time that we're going to spend is going to be on Project 2. Okay, let me just bring up the web page that describes Project 2 again. Alright, so the tasks that we have. Okay, one is to write a Python script that will process sales.txt into SQL statements that can insert the sales data. Okay, this should make use of the add sale function that's in the insert funcs.sql. Okay, then create a add sales view.sql so that when this view is included, the proper sales view is created. Okay, what I mean by the proper sales view is just this. If you look at this right here, okay, which is what was used to create sales.txt, then you just want to have a sales view that can put up this information. So for the cars table, make, model, and price, and for the customers table, first name, last name, and sex. Okay. And that's what you want to create. So pretty straightforward, hopefully, for you folks at this point. Okay, then we want to go and look at the code, project2.py, create a function, update text area that will update the text area on the first tab. That will make more sense when we actually are running the program, okay, so that you can take a look at it. So we'll do that later, we'll come to that, but that's actually it's a significant upgrade to the program, but it actually is not a whole lot more code. Okay, it's just basically creating a function by cutting part of an existing code and then moving it into that function, and then being able to call that function from two different locations. Okay, so it's an important change, but it doesn't involve lots of lines of code. Okay, and then finally, make it so that when you go open SQL script, when you click that menu item, it'll open up in the last directory that you opened an SQL script from. Okay, the reason why is, let's say I'm using one database like project2_db, then I want to use a tool for a different database, so then I set the database again, and then when I run an SQL script, if it were init.sql, for example, I want to do it from the directory for that database, right? So if I go to the lab1 database, then I want to go to the lab1 folder. Okay, and then if I want to run subsequent SQL scripts, then when I go open SQL script, I would like for it to open in the lab1 folder if that's the place that I just opened my init.sql from. Okay, so it's a thing that will make the program a little bit better for the user experience. And so it's again, it's not a big thing, but it's an important thing to consider when you make programs that other people might use, or even programs that you're going to use. If you make it so it's easier to use, then it's a better tool, right? And so we're going to be looking at that. Okay, but let's get to the first thing, which is we're going to process sales.txt into SQL statements that can insert the sales data. So first thing I'm going to do is in File Explorer, Windows Explorer, I'm going to look at my docs folder, and I'm going to look inside the Project 2 folder. And in the Project 2 folder, I have cars.txt, customers.txt, but I don't have sales.txt yet. Okay, I have makeCardData.py. I'm not sure if that's actually completed or not. We'll look at that. And let me then go to the Project 2 folder, okay, inside of projects, and then download the sales.txt file. Okay, so I'm gonna save this link in my project 2 folder. Yeah, that's the right one, so I'm gonna save it there, and then we're gonna start looking at that. At this point, I don't have MOBA Xterm turned on yet because the initial parts that I need to look at is that they're not GUI programs, they're just console-based Python programs. So I'll open that up a little bit later. Okay, but I do need to start up a Con EMU terminal. And let me actually open up a second one because it's quite likely that it'll be useful to have more than one open at a time. And for each of them, I need to set the environment variables. Okay, and then I want to start up the Docker containers. And so I need to change into the correct directory. Okay, so once a container start up, then I'm going to open up a root shell inside of the Postgres SQL container, right? Because that's where our Python stuff is. Okay, so I'm opening up inside the Postgres SQL Docker container a root shell script, and then once I get in there, then I want to change into the project 2 directory. Okay, so home/project 2. And what I want to do is come back here, and I'm going to open up, just because I'm not sure about the state of makecardData.py, so I'm going to open that up with Genie. And the insert funcs.sql, this is where we have defined add car. Okay, so to add a car, you need to pass the make, model, and the price. And then when I look at my makecardData.py, it's going to go select, it puts in the make, the model, and then the price. Okay, so if that runs correctly, which I'm going to verify in a little while, let's close proj2.py, we'll open that up later. Okay. Then we'll look at make customer data.py and then basically make sales data.py just a bit. Okay, so let me go back to my first terminal, and what I'm going to do is just run the makecardData.py script, and that looks correct. Okay, select, add car. Remember, when you're going to call a PLPGSQL function, the correct way to do that in an SQL statement is to say select and then the function name followed by the correct arguments to that function. Okay, so what we'd like to do is do a similar thing, okay, for customer data and sales data. And the reason why I want to actually go back to the customer data, although some of you have already done it, is because I actually need to have the customer data inserted before I can try to insert any of the sales data, because otherwise the customer IDs, they don't exist. So the customer is not actually in the database. Okay, so what I'm going to do then is, in Genie, I'm going to say, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to make a new program, or new window, I'm going to copy everything that I have here, and then I'm going to paste it into this. And then when I save this, I'm going to change the name. I'm going to put in project 2, and I'm just going to call it make customer data, make underscore customer underscore data dot py. And so let me change a few of the things that obviously need to be changed. I'm going to just change the comment there, but this has to change, okay, to customers. Okay. And let's check. Yeah, we have the customers.txt file located in there. It's a good idea to open that file just to see what it is that we have inside of there. Okay, so first line is a header line, which we don't need to be able to write to the queries. Okay, and then what we're going to do is read in the rest of the lines. This line is an extra one, so we want to make sure that we don't include that line when we're processing things. Okay, so if I look at make customer data py, this is basically, if I look at my line 3, read the header line, takes care of that. Then I read all the lines, read it in, and then I go up to length of lines -1, then I skip the last line, right? So now it's just going to process all the data lines. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to temporarily comment out all of this stuff, okay, by using triple quotes, okay, so that that's ignored. And then I'm just going to basically split it, okay, so on the vertical bar, and I'm going to run this. Okay, so didn't change it too much, but enough so that it's taking the different file into account, and then so I'm going to run it. Okay, so Python 3 make customer, so let me just type CU instead of CA, then if I hit a tab, to run that, and oh, but I didn't print out what tokens are, so I can't really see if that worked correctly. I think it worked correctly because there's no syntax errors, but let's actually verify. Okay, so I got all the customers in there. You can see that the first token, which is just the customer ID, we're not going to use that because we need first name, last name, and sex when we call add customer. So we need tokens 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so if I look back at my code, I could say first name equals tokens index 1, last name is equal to tokens index 2, and the sex is equal to tokens index 3. Okay, so we got those things there. And then we need to start making our print statement. As usual, we try to do this in steps. Okay, select add customer. Plus, let's put the first name here. And then, just so that we can just check to see if this is working okay, I'm going to just start out real simple and see if I can print the first name of the customer. And I'm going to have the starting single quote, but I don't have the ending single quote just yet. I just want to see if this works. Also, I should double check in my insert funcs.sql, add customer, the 3 parameters are first name, last name, and then the sex. Okay, so those are the 3. Those are all text values. So everything needs to be enclosed inside of single quotes, right? First name, last name, sex, all inside of single quotes. Okay, so let's run this. And oh, I forgot to stop printing out tokens, but I'll print that out. I'll take that out later. Select add customer, and it has a first name. So I need a single quote, a comma, and another single quote, right, to continue. So let's go ahead and add that in. Okay, so I'm gonna comment this line out. And if I go here, I added in the first name. Okay, then I'm gonna add in that. Then in the next line, let's see, I'm gonna put in now the last name. Plus the sex, plus the ending quote, parentheses, semicolon, as the last part of the string, and then let's check to see if that looks correct or not. Okay, it's got select add customer, Jane Doe, yeah, that looks okay. All right, so it's a kind of a quick change of the make car data.py, okay, not too much different, so it's not too hard to do. So let's look at, okay, since that one's working okay, I'm gonna, well, let me open sales.txt first. Sales.txt looks a little bit different. This one basically is either using spaces or a tab to separate things. My guess would be that these are tabs. You could copy and paste this into a Word document and then show the non-printing characters and you could see if they're tabs or not. But the reason why I think they are tabs and not spaces is because the amount of spacing that you see in between these things is not constant, which means that it's likely putting in tabs and it's just showing up at the tab stops, the default tab stops. So I'm guessing that those are probably tabs inside of there. We can figure that out pretty easily. Now this has no header line, and we're going to use all the lines in the file, so that makes it fairly straightforward to start to process. So let's open a new file. And I'm going to call this make sales data.py. And then I'm going to save this in my project 2 folder as that name, make sales data.py. All right, so what I'd like to do, first thing is open a file. Open, not any file, but open sales.txt. And you don't have to put the file mode of R because that's the default file mode, but I like to put it in to make it real clear what it is we're trying to do. And in this case, if you look at the file, it doesn't have a header line or a line that says so many rows or anything like this, so I can just read in all the lines like this. When you open a file for reading, you don't have to close the file handle because when your program ends, it's going to close that file handle for you. And because you're opening it for read-only purposes, you're not going to modify the contents of that file. So line 4 is actually optional. If you don't put that in, it would still be correct, okay, because it closes files that are open for reading automatically when the script completes. Okay, so because I have my lines list and I'm going to use every element in that list, I could just use a for each style of for loop. Okay, and what I'm going to do is break apart the lines. Okay, if you weren't sure how it's got to be split, you could do this. Okay, but I'm pretty sure it's just a tab character. Okay, so if I print out what the tokens are and they look appropriately separated, then I was correct in my guess. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to run this. Okay, and it looks like it broke it apart appropriately. So my guess that it was a tab character as a delimiter is correct. Okay, so let's take a look at the insert funcs.sql because we need to use the add sale function that's defined in that file, that PLPGSQL function, from this data that we have right here. Okay, so I come back to Genie, I go back to insert funcs.sql, and let's look at add sale. Okay, and let me move this over a little bit so I can see all of the parameters. Okay, so add underscore sale. I need the customer's first name, the customer's last name, the make of the car, and the model of the car. Okay, so the way our simplified data works, if we have those 4 pieces of information, we should be able to add the sale in correctly. Okay, so first name and last name of customer, make and model of the car. Okay, this function assumes that the car data and the customer's data is already inserted. Otherwise, it can't add a sale. Okay, nor would it make sense to add the sale, because when you add the sale and you have to include the car ID and the customer ID, if the car or the customer doesn't exist, it doesn't make sense to add a sale for that, right? So it presupposes that the car's data and the customer's data is already inserted in, which is why I just went ahead and created a make customer data.py. All right, so first name, last name, make and model. Okay, so if I look back at my terminal, then I need make and model, that's 0 and 1, the index. 2 is the price, I don't need that. First name is 3, and last name is index 4. Okay, so 3, 4, 0, and 1 when I'm trying to set up the code. All right, so let's do this. I'll say first name is equal to tokens index 3. Last name is equal to tokens index 4. Okay, make is equal to tokens index 0. And model is going to be tokens index 1. Okay, and then basically we look back at insert funcs.sql, and it'll be select add sale, then first name, then last name, then make, and then model. Right? Keep going back to there to make sure we got it correct. Okay, and then let's jump back to this. So we're going to have print statement, select, add, underscore sale. Okay. First name, last name, make, model, that's all text. So that all has got to be enclosed inside a single quotes, right? Just like the make customers data.py. Okay, so let's put our single quote here. Put in the first name. Okay, so let's see if we can get in the first name and the last name correctly and just run this. Okay, so it's got select, add sale, first name, last name. Okay, it has a parentheses before the make, and then we got to put in the make. We got to put in again the quotes. I mean, that's not printed, but the quote, single quotes, to complete this. And hopefully, at this point, this is becoming more routine for you. Okay. And then so we're going to add in the make and then the model. So let's run this again. Okay, and that looks correct. Okay, now, So I have an add initial data.sql, and I don't even know what's in it. So rather than go back to Genie, I'm just gonna cat this to the screen. And it looks like I just did the car information in there. Now, since I already have the car information in there, I could run the next script. Okay, I just type CU and then a tab, right? So it does customer, make customer data PY. And then that basically is going to be the next part. Now, whether you add in the customer data or the car data first doesn't really matter. It's just that both of those things have to be added in before you try to add in the sales data. Okay, so I'm going to run this again, but instead of using a single greater than symbol, which would overwrite add initial data.sql, I'm going to use the double greater than so it does appending, right? So here, add initial data.sql. Okay, so it appended it, or it should have. So let's take a look real quickly. So I got select add car, then select add customer. I'm gonna look at those and they all look like it's done correctly. So then that looks good so far. Okay, so I got car's in, the customer's in, so then I need to add the sales in. So the first thing I do, I just type make underscore s, right, and then it's going to run that one. I run it without appending, right, because I want to double check and make sure that this looks okay. And does all of those arguments, do they have single quotes around them? Yes, they do. So that looks all right. So then I run it again, but then once again I use the double greater than symbol so that it appends onto the end of it. Okay, and now I'm going to take a look at that file, but because it's long enough, I'm going to go back to Genie and then try to open up add initial data.sql, which is this right here. So if I look, it's got the car information, customer information, and then the sale information. Now, of course, you should double check to see if this is working correctly. So how do we do that? I'm going to go to my second ConEMU terminal, and I'm going to again go into the same container. Okay, and what I'm going to do is get into project2_db as Bob, and because I have the .pgpass file that has a connection information, I can just get in without entering the password. Okay, so a little simpler there. And what I want to do, the first step is I'm going to type \d to display the tables. Okay, nothing in there right now, so possibly I just cleared it out last time I ran proj2.py. So I'm going to go \i init.sql. So it puts the tables in at least, right? So my tables are in there. Okay, and then I'm going to go \df, and it has add car, add customer, add sale, get car ID, get customer, get cust ID. Okay, so it has the stuff from the insert funcs.sql. So that tells me that I had created the database before, I had run init.sql before, but then when I dropped stuff, I basically got rid of the tables. And yeah, in fact, that reminds me, if I look at drop.sql, let me open that. Okay, got too many stuff open right now. Make car data, I don't need that. Make customer data, I probably don't know. Actually, let me do one more step before I close those files. Okay, so I have the tables, I have the insert functions in the database. So the next thing to do is include add initial data.py to see if the data actually comes in. So let's attempt that. Okay, so I go back /I add initial data.sql, which we just created, and it adds in all of these things. And so I'm going to say select star from sales. It would be nice if I had a sales view, right, at this point, but at least it puts in the 8 rows, and then if you count the number of sales that were made, it actually is 8, so it looks like that worked correctly. This could not come in if we didn't put in the cars data and the customers data already. But is the cars data and customers data in correctly? Probably so, because we didn't insert the data manually, right? We came up with SQL scripts to add it, so since it came from the file, basically we can assume pretty safely that the cars data and the customers data is also in there correctly. Okay, so this is good. We don't have a sales view. The sales view would basically put in make, model, and price of the car, then first name, last name, and sex of the customer. Okay, that's pretty easy to come up with, or should be at this point, or if it's not, good practice to review it. But that basically looks like it's working correctly. So if I return back to the web page which says this is the things we have to do, I just accomplished number 1. Okay, what about number 2, adding a sales view so that you can basically generate this data right here. So make, model, price, first name, last name, and sex. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. Okay, to help you when you're doing that, okay, so here, I look at this, I say, okay, insert funcs.sql, that's working okay. Customer data, that worked okay. Customers.text, I don't need to look at that. Sales.text, I don't need that. This, okay. Add initial data, even that's working correctly. But init.sql is important to use because that tells you the relationship, right, that you need to support when you come up with the sales view. Okay, and it's basically you have your cars table and your customers table, and the table that joins those tables together is the sales table. So right here, this is the key, right, definition that we need, because our foreign key references are foreign key constraints are placed right there. Okay, so right, it would be basically you're going to go create view, sales view as select, make, model, price, first name, last name, sex from. Okay, so you go from cars, join sales, right? On cars.id matching sales.carid. Okay, join customers, okay, on sales.customer.id matching customers.id. Right? So if you look at just the definition in the tables, then it's not hard to write out the sales view. Okay, so that's something I'm going to leave for you to do. Okay, good practice. Okay, and it's not real hard. Just look at the init.sql. You can come up with it. Then try it out. See if you come back with the same data that you're supposed to get, and then that should work okay. All right, so that's 1, and then number 2, I'm going to let you do that. Now we're going to work on proj2.py, and then create this function which is going to make it so that we don't have duplicate code inside of our proj2.py, and it is going to be a little bit more functional. So 2 things we want to do. First is I'm going to start up MobaXterm, okay, so that we can run the Python GUI program. Then after we start that up, okay, we're going to run the program and we're going to look at what I'm talking about with respect to updating the text area. Okay, so then we'll work on getting that done. All right, so first step, is to start up mobile Xterm. Okay, and I'm going to wait until the X server icon turns green, which it just did. If I move the mouse cursor over to that, it says display 10.60.3.100:0.0. So that's what I need to set inside of my Con EMU terminal. Okay. And so let's go ahead and do that right here. Okay, so export display. So I'm setting the display environment variable 10.60.3. Everybody's one will be the same up to that point. Then it's different depending on which computer that you're sitting at. Okay, and so mine is 100 because that's instructor computer. Okay, but the rest of them, right? Hopefully you're used to it by now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so forth. Okay, so I set that environment. I set that environment variable, and then I'm going to run proj2.py to check if my GUI program can run. Okay, so it's trying to create it, and on mine it's on the second set here, and so this is running like this. Okay, so what I would like to do is then go ahead and open my proj2_db database. Okay, so here we go, proj2_db. Username is Bob. Password is somepass. Click OK. The status line, it says connected to proj2_db. It reads it in and it says that users, car, sales, and customers are the tables that exist within that. So the text area that we're talking about is this text area right inside of here. Okay, that's the text area we want to update. So what happens is that this doesn't get updated properly, okay, if I do something like this. I go File, Open SQL Script, I go to init, drop.sql, so let's do that, and I go Open, and I put /root, okay, and it should have, if this part updated, it should have dropped all of these, right? That should be blank there. It should just say tables, and it should have nothing in there. And then when I run init.sql, it should bring it back. So the text area, this part right here, this part in white down here, we want to update that not just when we set the database, because it does when we're setting the database. So take a look at this. If I go lab1_db and I say OK, and it reconnects, then we have a different set of table names for that, or let's say lab3_db, or not lab4, lab3, right? Then it updates. So we know every time we set the database, it updates that text area. But when we go open SQL script and it runs it and it would affect the tables and the views, then it's not getting updated. So we want to change that. That's the basic idea. Okay, so let's do that. Close this. Now what I would like to do is open proj2.py. Okay, and this is where we left off last time. Okay, so let's go through this. We've been adding in extra instance variables so we can keep track of the database name, the username, and the password, okay, so that we don't wind up hard coding, okay, the script, the connection strings, or the information that goes into the .pg pass. We don't hard code those anymore. Okay, and then we're going to add another instance variable a little bit later. Now this just initializes the user interface, which calls the tab1 setup, and the tab 2 setup, and we didn't have to do anything there. That was provided for you, but we did have to look a little bit at some of the names of the form fields, the text fields, in order to solve some. Okay, here's set database. This is what gets called when I change the database or I set the database initially. So let's take a look and see what it is that's updating that text area. Okay, so if we go back and look at tab 1, okay, there's two kinds of places that you can put in text. And let's just take a look at that. One is the Q line edit. That's a text form, right? So that's for like a single entry. But the Q text edit widget, that's the text area. So the name of that text area is table underscore area, self.table underscore area. So that's the instance variable that is going to be available to us in other locations, including inside of set database. Okay, so let's take a look. When we call this, what it does is it basically reads these edit fields, okay, which are Q line edit things, reads the value for the host, the port, the database name, and then the user and the password. We read those things in. We store the database name, the username, and the password. So later on, when we're trying to run a SQL script, we have those things available to us, right, to basically make the correct .pgpass file. All right, or pgpass file entry, I should say. Okay, so take a look at this. If you remember from Python that there's some cases where you do a try and an except. Okay, sort of like in Java when you do try and catch an exception, but in Python it's try and except. Okay, so same type of thing, but slightly different words. So we try to do the following. So what it does is it tries to connect to the database. Okay, so it gets a connection string and it tries to connect. Okay, and then it's going to change it to this. But the reason why this stuff is inside of a try block, let's look at the except block to see what the other thing that could happen. What could happen is that you don't connect to the database, so it'll throw this exception. Okay, so we catch that here and we'll say can't connect. Okay, so if I try to connect to a database for whatever reason and I can't connect, put in the wrong name, wrong username, wrong password, things of that nature, wrong port, wrong host IP address, then this is what would happen. Okay, you would just show in the status line, could not connect. Okay, but if it does connect, right, so we're still executing in here, then we can go ahead and get a cursor into the database. Okay, until you have a connection, you can't get a cursor. Remember, a cursor is the thing that we need in order to execute SQL statements on the database. So, basically, from this line here, all the way to the end of the try block, that's what gets called to update the table views, tables, and the views. Okay, so you could sort of see that. Look at that. You like select table name, select view name. That's how we're going to update what tables already have been created and what views have already been created. So from line 125, okay, all the way through this, okay, so it's going to go through the table results, so it can show all tables, because there's more than one table possibly, and more than one view possibly, and so that part is just used to process the possibility of more than one table, more than one view, and then right before the try block ends is that we append this view text, which has all of that information, to table self.table area, which is our text area. Okay, so that's a code basically we need to have put off into another function. So let's do this in a couple of steps. Okay, let me check a couple of things. Indent type, oh, I don't know why it's that. Spaces, indent width 4, okay, that looks good now. All right, so I'm going to go def, okay, update text area. And then what I want to do is I want to take the lines of code from here, basically, right? Because there's no point in trying to get a cursor, okay, unless you already got a connection to the database. Now, the careful way of getting that code into there is to do it one line at a time. Okay, so I do this, okay, and I'll go, well, here, let's do it a different way. Let's not be quite that careful. I'm going to highlight all of this, okay, from that line all the way to the end of the try block, yeah, so right before except. Okay, so I copy this, not cut it, but I copy this, and then what I do is I paste it here. Okay, so if I look at this, the indentation is not correct. Okay, so let me fix that. And I need to be a little bit careful that I unindent the right amount. And so all the way up to that for loop, should be unindented. Then if you look inside the for loop, right, you got this selection statement inside the for loop, so you got to watch the indentation on that. Okay, so this should be indented here. This was inside the for loop. Okay, but if you look at this table text thing, okay, is that inside the for loop? Well, let's look down here and say, no, table text, right, this updating of it, to put a new line character, is outside the for loop. So I come back to here, and I unindent this, and unindent it. These are all at the same level. Okay, so here, and this has to be unindented one level. This also. This. And then this. Right? This is not inside the for loop. This is at the very end of the for loops running that's going to put that in. Okay, so I left this here temporarily because then I could go back and make sure that my indentation is all correct, right? Because I got to fix up the indentation. But now that I think it's correct, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a triple quote here, and then a triple quote here, to comment that out. Now, if I do that, it's not going to update the text area, because even though I have a function called update text area, I'm not calling it yet, so I got to make sure I call it. Okay, so I comment this part out, right? And I go self.update text area. And so what I did is I moved the code that was here into this function, and I'm just going to call the function. So it should do the same thing as before. It hasn't fixed up everything, but it should basically allow us to have the same functionality that we used to have, right? Which is always something that you should verify. Okay, so let's run that. Okay, so let's put in project2_db. So if it's working correctly, the text area should be updated with the tables. Oops. So something didn't work correctly. Okay. So let me close the program. Yeah, this empty thing here, that doesn't look quite right. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so I somehow didn't copy all the right stuff. Okay, here's this print statement. Let me look back at the terminal. And so it printed the connection string. And that all looks okay, so it probably did connect. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do to help me get a handle on what could have happened. Okay, so I'm just going to print a literal string, update text area call. Okay, that won't fix anything, but it'll at least let me know if I'm calling the function that I think I'm calling. And so I'm going to run this again. Okay, so I'll put proj2 underscore db bob some pass. Okay, it says we got connected. The tables are not showing up, but I'm going to close this. And it says update text areas called. So at least I know the function is being called. All right. So I can take this out because I know it's being called. And so we got this cursor execute. Okay. So let's try the next thing. I'm going to go print table results. Okay, here's printing the view results, but the view results, I think that should be empty because we didn't add the view in yet. But table results wasn't being printed. Let's print that to see what that looks like. Okay, so let's run this again. Okay, so it says connected. Let me minimize this and take a look. Okay, so this is not good because what it's saying is that it's returning an empty list, and if we do \d, oh, what happened here? Oh, I'm sorry, I ran, okay, my mistake. Okay, I blew it on that. Let me do that again. I had run drop on it and to show you that it's not updating, and I forgot to run init.sql again. Okay, my mistake. Sorry. Okay, no wonder it's doing something. Okay, so what I'm going to do is hit OK again with the same connection settings, and then it puts it in. Okay, so actually there was nothing really wrong with this. This thing was working. Okay, but I did something dumb. I dropped all the tables and I forgot to add it in, so that's why I didn't have anything, because that table stuff gets updated if the list that, or the tuple that actually does, the list that returns is not empty. But if it's empty, then it doesn't put up any tables, obviously. Okay, so that's better. All right, so let's do this. Let me quit out of here. Oh, before I quit, what I would like to have happen is if I open an SQL script and run it, okay, don't forget /root here, then it should update this. That's the part that's not updating right now. Okay, now, before I forget, I'm going to run init.sql again so that the tables are back. Okay, before I quit this. Okay. Okay, so the part of the code that we need to turn to next, okay, let's see, this part works. So I'm going to highlight these lines that are in green because they're inside the triple quotes and get rid of that so I don't have that extra part to this. And I don't need this. And I don't really need this or this. Okay. Run query, that's on the second tab where we want to run a query on the opened database, right? So select star from cars or whatever. Reset table, every time we run a query, since what we want to display is the query results, we got a reset table, so we don't need to do anything there. Open SQL script. Okay, so we're going to get the file name. Okay. If the file name is not empty, okay, then we want to do these things. And then, actually, right, what we want to do is get the PG pass underscore path, that variable. So if it's okay, then this is when we do all this stuff. Okay, so inside of that, okay, inside the if okay, let's do this. We'll go self.update text area. Okay, so this is called if one of these two cases runs, right? Either the PG pass underscore path exists or it doesn't, so we have to create our own. If either of those things are true, we need to update the text area. Okay? So, right, and it's far better to make a function and just call it than to have all these lines here in two different places in the code, right? That's really bad if you duplicate that many lines of code. Making it a function, so you just have it show up one place, that's better. Okay, so come back to this, run the program, let's do project2 underscore db, Bob, some pass, okay, shows up because I ran init.sql again. Let's run drop.sql, /root, updated, right? No tables. Check again. Open SQL script, go init.sql, /root, I go okay, adds them back in. Yeah, that's what we wanted to have happen. So if I create an add sales view script and I include it, then I expect the views to get updated that way as well. Okay, so one more thing that you could consider doing, and that is, let me close this. You could consider, you don't have to do this, but you could think about this. If I look at drop.sql, what does it do? It just drops the tables. Would it be worth dropping the functions also to clean out not just the tables but the functions? Maybe, that's up to you. The view, since it'll depend upon these things that you have here, the cars, customers, and sales table, the view would get wiped out, so you don't need to drop the view. But you might consider dropping the functions. Okay. When I make a drop.sql for project 2, then I make it drop the functions also, okay, so that if I run one of your projects, then it doesn't have the functions inside the database, but it'll use the ones that you define. Of course, it's going to come from insert_funcs.sql, which is the file you already provided with, so it'll probably work, so it's no big deal. But for project 1, that was a more important thing to be able to drop everything. And then for project 3, it's going to be a big deal again. Okay, so there's something to think about. Think of, you're trying to manage more than one database possibly, and so you're using as many SQL scripts as is practical in order to do that. And now you have a GUI program that would allow you to run those things. Okay, so if I were going to manage this, once I test out the scripts individually, I would create a script called all.sql, and it would run all the SQL scripts in order to initialize things. Okay, so I would go /i init.sql, /i insert funcs.sql, /i add_initial_data.sql, so that everything gets added in the correct order. Then if you have an add sales view, then that could be added in anytime after init.sql. So that could be in there as well. But That way, basically, you don't have to run each one individually except to test it at first. Then you have another SQL script which does all of them. So, for example, oops, did the wrong thing. So if I did something like this, okay, something like this, you would do the following. Okay, so I would include init.sql, then I would include insert funcs.sql, and then I would include add initial data.sql. Okay, so you put the SQL scripts in the order that you want them to run. And so if you run this, it reinitializes the tables, then it reinserts the functions, and then it adds the data back in. Okay, so from the command line, okay, if I did this, run all.sql, then if you went and looked at everything that it's doing, it runs init.sql, so it drops the tables, creates the tables, insert funcs.sql, drops the functions and creates those functions, then add initial data.py, adds in the cars, then it adds in the customers, and then it adds in all the sales. Okay, so it's worth having a script that does that once you got everything set up correctly, once all these individual ones work correctly, because it's easier to reinitialize things, right, rather than run them one at a time. Okay, so let's get back to this. Okay, so that's basically how you can update the text area like that. There's one more thing here, but then let's take a break. We've been going pretty much non-stop for a while. So let's take a break and then we'll look at number 4. And what I'm also going to do, so you can go ahead and take a break already, but in the meantime, I'm going to upload some stuff up into the Daily Works folder for today. Okay, let's get started up again. Okay, so we're on the last item there, work on proj2.py, so the last directory that a SQL script was opened from becomes the directory used when the QFile dialog opens up again. Okay, so let's explain what is meant there. In other words, what is lacking. And then we'll go about trying to fix this. Okay, so for example, okay, open up and connect to proj2_db. Let's go file, open SQL script, okay, add sales view.sql is something I just added. Okay, so I put that in, and I put /root, then it adds that sales view in there. If well, let's just leave it at that. Okay, so if I go to query the database, and I go select star from sales view, then basically it shows that information, right, that was used to create sales.txt in the first place. Okay, so that's fine, nothing wrong with that. That's how it's working right now. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open lab1_db. Okay, so I connect to that, and then what I'd like to do, so this part updated, what I'd like to do is run, for example, init.sql again on lab1_db. So if I do that, I go file, open SQL script, this is project 2. So I go up a level, go into lab1, and then I say init.sql, and then I run it, and then it runs it like that. Now, if I wanted to run another script, okay, so I'm connected to lab1_db. If I do this, and I go select star from cars, it's empty, because I just ran, right, init.sql, so it just cleared out that database. But if I went and I said open SQL script, and I would like to add the data back in, then I gotta change directory again, right? It would be nice if after I ran init.sql from the lab1 folder, that I'm still in the lab1 folder, right? So I don't have to change directory here again to do this. Okay, so if I say add initial data.sql like this, and I went back and reran that query, the data is in there, I actually add that in. But you can see where it would be nicer if it basically kept track of the last directory that you were in whenever you open that file dialog box to open an SQL script, to choose an SQL script name. So that's a weakness right now, but let's go ahead and address that. Okay, so I'm gonna close this, and then let's take a look at the code. Okay, so when we click on that menu item, it runs open SQL script. And here's the key thing right here on this line. When we call get open file name for the QFile dialog object, this is the directory that it opens at. And that's just the current directory. So that means the directory that proj2.py is located in. That's basically going to be that directory. So let's start to make some changes on that, so it's going to eventually become a little bit more user-friendly. So I'm going to scroll all the way up to the constructor, and I'm going to go self.last_dir for last directory. It has to start off with some value. So I'm going to start it off with being just the current directory. Okay, so I just defined that in there. Then I'm going to go back down to the open SQL script function, and instead of putting in this, hard coding it to this, I'm going to use self.last_dir, so it uses that variable instead. Okay, so I put that in, open SQL script. Here's where I need to make the change. Okay? Now, this doesn't solve the whole problem. However, I want to make sure I haven't broken anything, right? So I save this, I'm going to run it just to make sure that the program still works like it used to work. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, and I go File, Open SQL Script. Where does it open up? In the current directory. Right, so it's working the same way as it used to. So at least that's not broken. Okay, so is it just 2 lines of code different, but you ought to check it, right? So let's review that. Right, I added an instance variable, so it begins with self. Last_dir is the last directory. It has to have a value to start with, so I make that current directory to start with, okay? Because that's what we want to do. We want to start in that directory. Okay. Then what I did is in the open SQL script function, that's what I used here. Now, let's suppose the person goes and they want to use lab1_db. So then what they did is they looked for and found init.sql in the lab1 directory. Then if we reach here, okay, then what we'd like to do is come up with the current directory. Now, let's do the following. Okay, so I'm going to go print. And so I know what variable it is that I'm looking at. I'm going to print out file name, because the file name is not the same as the directory, right? Okay, so let's take a look at what that is and just run it. Okay, so we're making changes small pieces at a time because we want to figure out how to get that directory correctly. So let's run it. Okay, so I run it. Okay, connect to proj2_db. Oh, let's connect to a different database. Okay, so lab1_db, Bob, some task. Okay, let's connect to a different one. Okay, so I do this. Okay, nothing shows up here yet because I didn't call OpenSQL script, right? So let's go back to this. Let's call OpenSQL script. So I do this, and I'm going to change directory. Okay, I'm going to the lab1 directory. I'm going to run init.sql. Okay, so I say open /root. It runs this. Let me look here, and it says file name /home/lab1/init.sql. So it has the full path to that file, which means that the directory is everything up until the file name, right? So /home/lab1, that's what we basically want to get, and that's the directory name. So how do we get that based upon this is what we have here? Okay, so for that, let's go into Python interactive mode to get a better idea of how we might get everything after this last slash removed. So include everything up until the last slash, right? So /home/lab1. So let's look at that. So I'm going to exit out of database and just go into Python interactive mode. Okay, so let's make a string. I'm going to go s1 equals /home/lab1/init.sql. That's just a string. I want to get out of that. I want to basically drop off init.sql, right? And then get back the rest of it. Okay, so how might I do something like that? Well, one thing we could do is I could say tokens is equal to s1.split on the slash. And I'm going to print tokens. So basically, you get this. Oh yeah, and it looks like it's got an empty string. Okay, yeah, that probably doesn't matter. Okay, so it's got an empty string before the first slash. But the point is, if I split it on the slash, then init.sql, which is the part I'm trying to cut off, right, is the last element in this list. So how do we drop, okay, the last element in a list? Well, let's do this first. We'll go dir, right? Interactive mode, dir means list all of the things that are available for that variable. So if you look at it, forget all the ones that have double underscores, right? Those are stuff that is used by other things in order to do things. So we start looking at this, okay? Append, have we used append for lists before? Sure, right? That's how we add to the end of a list. Clear, could clear the whole list, okay? Could get the count for the whole list. Okay, extend, index, insert, that's to put something in, pop, remove, reverse, sort. Okay, so the ones that look promising are pop and remove, right? So let's do this. I go tokens.pop, and then I print tokens. That's the one. That's what gets rid of it, right? So remove, actually, you have to put the index of what element you want to remove. Pop just knocks the one off the end of the list. So pop and append are sort of like, they go hand in hand, right? Append adds to the end, pop knocks off the end. Okay? If you want to remove the first item, you got to use remove, and you got to pass it the index 0 to remove the first item. Okay? So why do they make it so that when you have append and you have pop, that they just adjust the last element in the list? Because then you can make a stack really easy, right? Append, you put it on the top of the stack, pop, you pop it off the top of the stack. So that's basically how it was made. So now, if I pop that, my list looks a little bit better. All I need to do is say S2, a different string, okay, is going to be equal to an empty string dot join, okay, token. Oh, sorry. Slash not join tokens. And then if I print out S2, then that's what we want. Okay, so we basically get the path that way. Okay, so I got to split it apart, pop it, then join it again. So let me do that. That's hard to see from in back. Let's do that again. Here's S1. That's that. Okay, tokens, we obtain it by splitting on the slash. So tokens looks like this. If I go tokens.pop and I print tokens, it looks like this. If I go S2 equals, okay, I'm going to join on the slash tokens, then S2 becomes this. Okay, so that way you guarantee just to get rid of the stuff on the very end, because that's what pop will do. Okay? So the slash is the delimiting character that's used to separate directories or folders, right? That's how we say slash something, slash something. That's a directory separator. So we can split on that, and then we can join on that to basically get the corrected string. Okay, so what does that mean? Here, we got the file name here. Alright, so I'm going to say tokens is equal to file name dot split on the directory separator. Okay, then I'm going to pop this thing so it gets rid of the last one. Then I'm going to say self dot last dir is equal to joining using the slash. We're going to join tokens back together again. Okay? And so I'm going to go print self.last underscore dir. And I'm going to print self.last underscore dir, last directory. Okay? And so it's changing the value of self.last dir. So when I run the program again, then it should save the last directory. Okay, so let's see how that works. Well, am I still, the program's still running? Yeah, the program's still running. Gotta close it, because otherwise we don't get the changes, right? We don't get the updates. Okay. So let's start off with proj2 underscore db, Bob, some pass, connected. Okay, now I'm going to change this to lab1 underscore db, okay, and connect. Okay, then I would like to run lab init.sql from lab1. Now it starts off, right, this is the very beginning, it starts off in the current directory, so that's correct. So I go up a level, drop down to lab1, I run init.sql /root, okay, and it did that. Okay, so basically it dropped, right, everything in those tables, because it recreated the tables. So if I go select star from cars, nothing there, right? Because I just cleared everything out. So if I go open SQL script though, look at the directory that it started off in, lab1. So then add initial data.sql is right there. Okay. Okay. And I go file, open SQL script, still in the lab 1 directory, right? That's the last directory I was in. Add view.sql / root. Okay. That put that in. Now I go select star from sales view, and the data is all there. Okay. So if I now go file, open SQL script, oh, not wrong, mistake, set database. So I set my database to proj2_db, okay, connected to that. I want to run an SQL script, not in the right directory because I just was in lab 1, but we should expect that. Go to proj2, and I'm going to run drop.sql, okay, root, okay, cleans out everything, tables, views, all gone. I go file, open SQL script, it opens in the last directory. Okay, so I could add the sales view in. I could add the initial data in. Okay. And, oh, something didn't work right, did it? Ah. Oh, okay. So you look at that and go, oh, something's going wrong here. What went wrong? Not sure, but I'm pretty sure it's I forgot to do init.sql. Okay, so let me do that. Because I dropped it, but I forgot to run init.sql. Okay, my mistake. Okay, there's add sales view.sql. I don't have to change directory, because that's the last directory. Okay, open SQL script, add initial data.sql / root. Okay, then that's okay. Then if I go select star from sales view, then it gives me the actual data in that sales view. Okay, so the program works better because we made those changes. Okay, so I don't need this to get printed out anymore, so I'm just going to comment that out. Okay. So let's review those changes. The first change is in the constructor, where we just said self.last_dir is single dot, which is current directory. And then the second change we made is that when we open up the file dialog box, instead of here, the current directory, we put self.last_dir. So if we change this, it changes the directory that it gets opened up into. Then the other thing was, once we get the file name, we can split it on the directory separator, get rid of the last stuff, which is just the file name, and then when you join it back together, that becomes the path to the last directory that we were in, and then that basically fixes it. Okay, so now the program is more user-friendly. So if you create something, you try to like make it work, give it its basic functionality first. Okay, then you add these little things in so that it works better for you. Okay, so let's, oh no, that's okay. I'm going to demonstrate running drop and then all from within the Python program, but that's okay. That you know how that will work. So these 3 lines of code here, this change right here, and then adding this in as a instance variable inside the constructor, that's what's done basically to get it to work. Okay, and that's a really good example of making use of an instance variable for a class, right? I put in the constructor so that in this here, I can basically change the value of it, and anywhere that we have access to self, we have access to the last directory if we needed to. Okay, so let's say for some reason you decided you wanted to add to this program, and instead of just opening file, you want to basically save the results of a query. Okay, so when you save the results of a query, you have to write to an output file. when you write to that output file, you would like it to be in the last directory that you open, right? Because if I open to a new database, I don't want to have to go and look for a different file name look for a different directory to write the output file to. I just want to type the file name and it saves to the last directory. That would be a reason to make use of this kind of variable. So if we had another function, write query result, right? Then you could make use of self dot last underscore dir. Okay, any questions on that? All right, so go ahead and try to add that in. That's not important for the overall project 2.py, but it does make your project a little bit better. Okay, and if you don't make it do that, this last part, I'm not going to count off on your project score, so you don't have to put that in. But that's just a nice thing to be able to put in, make your program a little bit more user-friendly. Okay, so let's take a look back here, and what it says is work on lab 8, okay, lab8.html, okay, and then work on programs to insert cars.sql, update cars.sql, to create those things. All right, so first thing, I'm going to go here, and I got all kinds of files open for project 2. I'm going to close all of them. Then I'm going to come back to here and go up to docs and down into lab 8. Okay, so if for lab 8, I probably want to open init.sql for lab 8. Okay, although that was the one you were supposed to come up with on your own. So make insert cars.sql. Insert funcs.sql, let's open that. Update funcs.sql, let's open that one. Okay, so make insert cars.py is a Python program that's going to call the add car function so that we can add in the cars if we read in cars.txt. Okay, so if you look, insert func, here's add car, you need to pass make, model, price. Okay, pretty straightforward. Okay, so here's the make, there's the model, there's the price. The price, unlike the make and model, doesn't have single quotes around it, right? Because that's a number. Okay, so that was done, or could be run, to create insert cars.sql. Okay, so let's look at doing that. Okay, so here, I'm in the project 2 folder, so let's change into the lab 8 folder. Okay, and I want to do that in my second shell as well. I don't know why I typed lab 2. Okay, so I'm in the lab 8 folder in both of these. If I do from last time, I go Python, make, insert cars.py. Oops, that's not going to work because there's no Python 2, only Python 3. Okay, so it does this, and so that could be used to create insert cars.sql. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so I'm going to run this again and just go insert underscore cars.sql, and so now I created the SQL script to insert those cars into the database. Okay, now the other part we got to work on is using this update function. The update function is actually pretty simple though. All it does is it takes the make and the model of the car and then the new price. So it's just going to set it to whatever this price is. That means that what you want to do in your Python program is come up with the old price, okay, and then you can get that from opening up the cars.txt file. Why? Because if I split this apart, okay, see, it's probably tabs, okay, but you can just use white space. I can take this number and increase it by the correct amount, and then I can get things to work correctly. Okay, so let's look at that a little bit. Okay, so here's the input file. Doesn't have any header line or anything like that. Okay, it's got the ID, make, model, and then the price separated by, you see, because the number of spaces is not the same, then it's probably not spaces, but it's probably a tab that's separating that, okay, that data. But if you do split and you leave it empty, the split function, then if whether it's spaces or tabs, it'll work in either case. Okay, so any white space, right? So spaces, tabs, new line characters, split without any delimiting string, it'll split it on the white space. Okay, so you could just split it that way. So let's look at that. Okay, so let's make a new file. And I'll just call this make update cars.py and save it to the lab 8 folder. Okay, and I'll start you off with this. I'm not going to complete it, give you something to do, but here's how you can start it. In file equals open cars.txt, open it for reading, read all the lines, optionally enclose the file handle, okay. And then since you're going to process every single line the same way, you can use the for each style of for loops. Okay, and then try to break things apart. Okay, you could put tab or you could leave it empty. Either one should work. Okay, you can experiment, try out both. And then let's just run this. Well, actually, I could run either one. Okay, so Python 3, make update cars.py, and so it does this. Okay, so the basic idea is split apart now, right? In tokens, index 0 is the ID, we don't need that. Make is index 1, model is index 2, price is index 3, but this time you need to convert price into a number because you need to update that price by multiplying it by 1.02, increasing it by 2%. Okay, so you need to convert it to a number, multiply it by 1.02, and then convert it back to a string when you're basically printing it to the screen so that you can create the update cars.sql. Okay, so inside the for loop, right, convert this into a number, multiply by 1.02, then convert it back into a string. Okay, so that's the idea. When you convert it back to a string, you have an option. You can just use the str function, right? Just str parentheses around the price, or you could actually format it so it shows up with 2 decimal places. It doesn't really matter to me which way you do it. Okay, so in other words, this, right? Let's say you have a string and it looks like this. To convert that into a number is real easy, right? Right? Super easy. Just call float on it, right? Now, I want to take that number and it becomes this. So when you convert this back to a string, you could do it this way, right? Or if you really wanted to, you could also do it this way. And force it to have 2 numbers after the decimal place. Doesn't matter to me, actually. Either way is okay. So either way, storing it inside the database is all right when you basically make it. Okay, so float it and either call str or formally convert it back so it has two numbers after the decimal place. Doesn't matter, that's your choice, okay, it won't matter in terms of getting it done. And so all you need to do is add to this program, right? So it grabs tokens 0, not tokens 1, tokens 2 for the make and the model, tokens 3, convert it using float, multiply that by 1.02, convert it back to a string, then come up with your print statements so that it is calling this function, okay? Select, update car, you pass it the make, the model, and then the new price, okay? So, based upon the stuff that you've already seen, then that should be something that is not too bad, so go ahead and try to do that, and then get that going. Okay, now, project 2 is higher priority than lab 8, so I would work on project 2 first, try to make everything work. If you got everything working there, make sure that you know the answers to the questions that you have to answer for project 2. Okay, because what you need to do at the very end of it is answer those questions there. Okay. And then, after you got that done, then you could go back and look at lab 8. Okay, but I wouldn't work on lab 8 until you got those things set up correctly. So for lab 8, what am I going to do? I'm going to upload files. Okay, so make update cars.py. That's not finished by any means, but I'll upload it if you need like a starting point for that program in order to get that to work. Okay, so that's basically it for today. You can keep working on stuff, of course, we've got half an hour left. If you got questions, raise your hand and I'll come around and help you with it.
So